Hello everyone. Firstly, thanks so much for your positive comments on last week's video. I'm glad my own story struck a chord with a number of you. Each of us has a story to tell about our encounter with God and the difference Jesus makes to us today. All our experiences find points of contact with the human stories in the Bible. I'm glad God chose to communicate with us not just through instructions or propositions, but primarily through the person of Jesus. The readings in the Easter season are often stories of encounters with Jesus that change people. I'm drawn to the end of John's Gospel, which tells us about the reinstatement of Peter. You'll remember how just a few days before Jesus had warned him that he'd deny him 3 times. Peter, in an act of typical bravado, protests his resilience. "Even if all fall away on account of you, I never will. Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you." And yet a few hours later, such assertions ring hollow. By the lakeside, where the disciples have gone back to fishing, Jesus appears, and after the pleasantries of a barbecued breakfast, Peter waits nervously for Jesus to bring it up. You may have had the anticipation of one of those difficult conversations yourself after your own failure. I know I have. Jesus asks him 3 times, "Do you love me?" Scholars have spilt a lot of ink over that question. Jesus uses 3 different Greek words for love. Was it symbolic? Was he recapitulating the former denials? Or was Jesus just repeating for emphasis? It's one of those intriguing passages in John where the answer is elusive. The question is the interesting thing. Do you love me? Not what on earth did you think you were doing, nor how are you going to show you're sorry and make it up to me, or even what is your learning from this you can share with the wider group? This is Peter's second call and commissioning. Its first, by another lake, was full of brash confidence, more about ego-driven ambition than a genuine submission to Christ. This calling is much more realistic. His failures are all too clearly exposed. This second call is less about his ego and gifts, and much more about the grace and forgiveness of God. I can see something of myself in him. I recognise the same pride when I first responded to God's call to ministry 30 years ago. 27 years on from ordination, I hope I haven't become jaded or cynical, but I'm certainly more realistic and aware of the intractability of my character flaws. I may not have denied him explicitly, though I wonder whether I've come close on occasions. But I've certainly done so implicitly. There have been times in my Christian life when if I'd been arrested for my Christian faith, you'd have struggled to find sufficient evidence for a conviction. The forgiveness Jesus offers here seems more real and necessary as I get older, not less. Perhaps this time of isolation, when many of our props have been stripped away, has caused us to do some self-examination. The flaws, small denials by word and deed have come to mind, and we wonder how we will rejoin the way when we're let out. The simple question Jesus asks us is the same as he asked Peter, simply, do you love me? The painter Rembrandt revisited the presentation of Jesus in the temple several times in his career. The first painting early on in his life shows off his brilliance and mastery, but frankly has no soul. The last one was found unfinished in his workshop after he died. The image is reduced to 3 faces against a darkened background. Simeon in the picture is Rembrandt's self-portrait. He tenderly cradles Jesus, hands clasped in prayer, looking on him with tender love, and Jesus looks back at him. This is the fruit of a life of failures and repeated, amazed, grace-filled encounters with the God who persistently asks the same question every time we fail and seek him. Do you love me? And the response, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. I may be incompetent, selfish, willfully disobedient, disillusioned, and even cynical. But in the middle of all that, you do know that I love you. Well, says Jesus, that's enough. Have a good week, and may God bless you and keep you and open your eyes to the extravagant, costly, precious, forgiving love of God.